This morning we'll be doing a session on cloud, what we're calling Cloud Chronicles, real world global transformations with our client AtkinsRéalis. We'll get into some introductions here in just a minute. There will be a pause during the presentation for some questions, but feel free to ask along the way if there's something that's you really want to get into, and then we'll have another session question Q&A at the end of the presentation. So with that, we'll get started, and first we'll let Laurence introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Laurence Cauchy. I'm BPM Center of Excellence Director at AtkinsRéalis. I also work on EBS transformation project. I'm the finance lead for the Canada Wave, our finance transformation. We're migrating everything to one single ERP, and we're doing a wave in Canada. I also participated in a lot of finance transformation projects since 2019, implementation of Blackline, implementation of the EPM Cloud. So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Okay, thank you, Laurence. Randy?
Yeah, Randy Martin, Director of Financial Application Strategy at AtkinsRéalis. I'm leading currently all the solution architecture for the global rollout and consolidation on the EBS. Been around EBS since 1994. I was on somebody the other night. The first EBS version that I worked with was 9.4.2. I didn't know went back that far, but that was back in the character screen days. So been a long journey to get to this point.
Thank you. I'm Bruce Mahan. I'm the VP of ERP Solutions at Project Partners. I've been working with Randy and Laurence on the One ERP initiative at AtkinsRéalis for, was it about 2 years now, I think. And we've got more work to do yet to get the entire organization rolled into the global EBS platform. I've been at Project Partners for 10 years, been in the Oracle space for close to 25 years now. Started out in the project suite on the EBS side. I was a little behind you. I was 10.7, so but worked through that into Cloud ERP and basically manage all our engagements here at Project Partners. Okay, so from that we'll get into a discussion around past to present and the history of where AtkinsRéalis started from, and then how we go through the future of where they're headed. So could each of you briefly describe your organization and share what your technology landscape looked like before moving to the cloud?
So I'm going to take that one. AtkinsRéalis is a company, it's an engineering services company that's composed of two former companies. SNC-Lavalin acquired Atkins in 2017, and the company was renamed to AtkinsRéalis in 2023. Because the two companies were about the same size when the acquisition occurred, it was a big challenge to harmonize the financial system, and it still is. When there's one company that's a lot smaller than the other, you can just integrate them directly into your financial system. But being two companies of about the same size, you can't do that. It's going to be too much of a change for the company you're acquiring. So from this acquisition, we inherited two different HFM applications on-premise. One was the legacy Atkins one. The other one was the legacy SNC one. And the legacy SNC one was connected to a PBCS application. All of those were on-premise. So we connected the two HFM applications together so the Atkins could feed the SNC one, because it was our main corporate application. And it was also feeding the PBCS application. We also inherited, we had three major ERPs. So Atkins JDE, Atkins Oracle EBS, and SNC-Lavalin Oracle EBS. It was about, like, the JDE one was the biggest one, but it's about the same, no, not the same size. The JDE and the SNC-Lavalin one were the biggest one. The Oracle EBS in the US that we're all migrating to now was a bit smaller, but better structured, I think. Randy? And all of those applications were on-premise at that time. So, yeah. Anything to add?
No, I think that covers
From a migration strategy, can you walk us through your legacy system architecture, like what on-premise Oracle ERPs or supporting systems you were using? I know Lawrence, you briefly touched on that just a minute ago, but we're getting a little more detail there. And what specific technical or operational requirements drove your organization to move to OCI and/or your cloud applications?
Yeah, so we had the first migration that OCI had was an 11i system. This is back in 2020 2021. And so we did a simultaneous upgrade and moved to OCI. So we upgraded from 11i to 12.2.9, big leap, and moved all of our infrastructure into OCI in 2021. So, the main purposes that or objectives of that move was, there was an application upgrade, obviously, that was important because we were on older technology. Security issues were becoming a problem. Obviously, 11i was out of support at that point. So we wanted to get onto one of the latest releases. I think we were maybe 1 point behind 12.2.10 where it was at that point. We were looking for a more scalable and better performing solution, and so basically to take advantage of cloud infrastructure. And then the move to that platform, sort of future-proofed and de-risked that infrastructure. So one of the challenges we've had, we had already been on EBS since 2008, and so a couple of different times we had changed out our on-prem hardware and infrastructure. And so those were always difficult moves, and lots of work and a lot of capex. So I think one of the things that we were looking to do was to get onto a platform that we really wouldn't have to worry about managing that infrastructure, having to refresh that infrastructure every few years. And so it allowed us basically to get all the benefits of cloud infrastructure without necessarily needing to move to cloud ERP. So that's one of the main messages for us and really for me in this presentation is just you can achieve a lot of those benefits for cloud, the whole scalability, the performance, without necessarily moving to a separate ERP, still use your EBS platform.
Yeah. So for EPM, we had the same infrastructure, security, and risk reason as for the EBS to migrate to cloud, but we also had that need of migrating the two HFM applications together. So we took this opportunity to completely revamp our consolidation application. We migrated them together and we moved to EPM Cloud. So we redesigned completely the applications. EPM Cloud presented multiple benefits for us. The access and roles and responsibility management was a lot easier than it was previously in HFM. We had increased visibility from being on a single instance. So our corporate finance team now have the same level of granularity from all of the businesses across the company. Before they were getting only summarized data from the legacy Atkins regions. We have no infrastructure to manage, so it's a lot better for cybersecurity concerns, version updates. User experience is a lot more intuitive and harmonized, and it's being improved continuously. That makes a very big change for us. It's greater for adoption by the users, that the user experience is smooth.
From a planning and preparation standpoint, what were the key considerations before starting the migration, and how did you ensure that all your stakeholders were aligned to join in the process?
Yeah, I think one for us, a lot of the aspects that we were achieving were technical, and so moving from on-prem to cloud infrastructure, upgrading the database from 11 to 19C, upgrading EBS from 11i to 12.2.9. Yes, there were some significant changes and functionality enhancements in those versions, but our main objective in this was a technical upgrade and try to insulate the users as much as possible from any of that complexity. So our main message for our upgrade was really just keep the user experience largely intact, and it reduced the change management significantly. So there were a lot of, where we had tools that integrated with EBS that were, say, front ends to that for our users, those didn't really change. They had to obviously point to a new source, a new connection string. But for our users, that experience was largely seamless. And so that was, I think, our main thought process going into it, was to keep the upgrade more of a technical upgrade and less change management.
Yeah, for EPM it was completely different because we were completely revamping the application. So what we did is we held workshops with all of the stakeholders, and we designed a vision based on these workshops and on prior data gatherings. And the key considerations for this project were that the tool needed to work for both consolidation purposes and financial statements. It had to work also for management reporting, because the two, we have the FCCS and the EPBCS application. FCCS feeds EPBCS, and we're doing all of our management reporting from EPBCS. It has to be user-friendly. It has to be easy to maintain and develop in-house. This is what the COE is there for. And the tool needed to provide strong reporting capabilities, because we had a lot of reporting that was done manually on the side, and we wanted to be able to report directly from the tool and limit manual effort. And the tool needed to be future ready, so allow for growth and improvements. And I think we got this from EPM Cloud.
Okay, the most enjoyable part of any of these things, the challenges, right? So what were the biggest challenges you encountered during the migration process, and how did you address and overcome those challenges?
Yeah, so for us, I think really getting alignment on the strategy and design, because it was different requirements from our corporate finances team, like the consolidation team, the FP&A team, the tax team. They all had their own requirements, and the different regions, and they were not working the same way. So we were really coming from two different ways of working that we had to harmonize. So that was a big challenge. And because we were changing everything, the change management became a really big challenge. We were also implementing a entity structure that's a tree structure for the first time. We had a flat structure before, so the main parent entity and all the other entities under it. Now we have 14 levels of parent-children entities in the tool, so that presented a real challenge, designing the tree structure and designing the consolidation to go with it. I think also leveraging the cash flow capabilities of EPM. All of our cash flow was basically done manually before, and in EPM you really have a lot of functionalities to do an automated cash flow. So that was a challenge for us.
And on the EBS side, really, I think the challenges were mostly on the upgrade side. So moving to OCI really could not have been easier. It was, that aspect was actually quite smooth. I mean, from a user experience, URL changes, your connection string to the application, that URL, so change management to for people that have bookmarked how they got into Oracle apps. Any integrations to Oracle, those connection strings changed. But honestly, it was everything else about that was relatively straightforward. The main changes or main impacts that we had or challenges were really around the customizations that we had done in EBS. But the benefit there was we had done a lot of we're pretty strict about using APIs on all of our customizations, and so that significantly simplified the upgrade. So even going from 11i all the way to 12.2.9, most of our integrations migrations worked untouched, with very little enhancement. There was a few APIs that had additional parameters maybe you have to deal with, but that wasn't really a significant technical challenge. We did have some automation to address some of the data model changes in Oracle's database between those versions, and there was some technical challenge between the 11 to 19C version of the database that we had to address, but overall it was not a significant or a heavy lift. We did the entire upgrade from 11i to 12.9 and moved to OCI in 6 months. So it was a pretty relatively quick project.
Okay. In addition to that, you talked good discussion on how you manage the challenges from a transitioning standpoint from your you talked about the URL changes and that kind of thing that really weren't much of a big hit. Is there anything else you could point out on how you manage the transition from your legacy systems to the cloud?
Yeah, I think one of the early sort of objectives we had was we knew cloud ERP was sort of in our long-term horizon, but I think one of the main strategies here was we felt like we could achieve a lot of the benefits of cloud having our EBS platform in OCI without necessarily needing to take on the move to cloud ERP at that point. So we had done a fairly extensive analysis to look and compare, do we want to consider cloud ERP migration, or do we want to just do the move to OCI and defer that? So I think that was a key part of our strategy, was to defer the move to cloud ERP. Let's get on the later release of EBS on cloud infrastructure and take advantage of a lot of the benefits of cloud, the scalability, the performance, a lot of the things you've seen, some of the AI stuff now. There's some advantages to being an OCI versus being on-prem. So that was a key factor, I think. We didn't maybe AI wasn't in the picture at that point in 2020, 2021 as much, but it was really more the idea of getting some of the benefits of cloud without taking on the heavier lift of moving to cloud ERP. So I think for us, EBS has got a long roadmap in front of it, still being actively supported by Oracle. So that, I think that strategy is borne out for us as a good one.
For EPM, I think for us what was really, really important in the transition from one tool to the other, except the user acceptance and training and everything, was that because we're a public company, our numbers can't change. It's really, really important that there's no difference between what was calculated before in the prior system and what our new system calculates. It's not calculated the same way, but the end result has to be the same, or else we could have to do a restatement of our financial statements, and nobody wants that. So we went live with the EPM Cloud application in March 2023. So what we did is we did a parallel run for the first 3 months of the year. So we made sure that everything was equal between the systems, between the old HFM corporate application and the new EPM system. And we engaged, during those 3 months, we engaged with parts of the business. So we started with the consolidation team, then we went to the tax team, then we went to the business users. So that really helped also in building confidence in the tool, because we could show that the results was the same.
Okay. The next slide we have up for you all is basically a graphic of the One ERP initiative timeline. Randy, you want to add any color to this?
Yeah, I think this highlights really well our, to go back to the strategy of why we moved to OCI. If you look at the scalability, so you look at that graph and you see how many users we were. So we were consolidating these 3 major ERPs into one ERP. That one ERP was going to be dramatically growing over the next few years. And so being on cloud in OCI, we were able to rapidly scale that to support this sort of growth. So you can see here we're kind of right in the middle of that at the moment. We've completed our move to UK, Europe, and India. US are all on these platforms, about 22,000 users. And then by the middle of next year, we expect to complete out to the Canada, Asia Pacific, which will take us up to over 30,000 users on that platform. So, and the performance of EBS has held really well throughout all of this. That's taken a huge concern off of. We did our load testing certainly before we went live, but we never really encountered the sort of issues that you might think see growth like that. So for us, a real positive experience.
All right, we'll move on into looking at beyond the implementation, and how they're navigating the process, looking at future functionality and those kinds of things. So let's talk about the current applications implementation. So how is, Laurence, how is implementing Cloud EPM as a unified financial and operational data platform impacted your operations from a financial perspective and your decision-making processes?
Yeah, so one of the goals of moving everything together on one single application was harmonizing our finance function. So I think it contributed a lot to that because it harmonizes the processes across, but it also harmonizes how the finance function works together. It really increased the collaboration between the team, since everybody understands the impact of what they're doing on the next person on the chain of command. All the systems are now integrated together, and it offers more streamlined processes. It increases the visibility on the financial information, as I said before, because we're not getting any summarized data. Well, it's summarized in some way, we don't get the transactional information in the EPM, but it's more granular than it was before. And how we design the application also removes a lot of duplicate work. So before, we had some forms that needed to be filled in HFM, and then there was a second person filling almost the same thing in our PBCS application. The people from the legacy Atkins region, they had to fill some information in their own system, then go in the corporate system and add some additional information. So now it's all in a single place. Everything is filled at the right level, no duplicate work. So it's a lot more smooth. So, yeah.
Okay. So the next slide we're showing here is really how how EPM is broken out. They give us some statistics on, how AtkinsRéalis has deployed it and how they're currently using it. I mean, it's the 3 live connected applications between FCCS, the planning and narrative reporting, as Laurence mentioned. You can see the number of users across a number of countries. We basically have 24-hour Center of Excellence support coverage, and you can see the numbers going on from there all the way up to 8,700 management reporting units. So it's a small pocket of reporting that you're doing, right?
Yeah, that's it. So that's what I was saying about more granularity. We didn't have that level of detail before in the corporate application.
Now, earlier you mentioned that you rolled in 3 main ERP systems, but it's actually more than that, right? Because there were smaller ones. Am I correct?
Yeah, there are smaller ones. So we have the 3 main ERPs that are interfaced directly into the EPM application, and we have about 10 other small ERPs that are manual integration. So the users in the regions that have those small ERPs, they do the integration manually to the EPM cloud.
Okay, thank you. All right, so AI, not that that's been a popular topic this week, but I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So how are you leveraging AI capabilities within Cloud EPM to enhance your business processes?
So like a lot of people, AI is quite new to us, so we're exploring. We did a first test of first phase of testing of IPM and predictive forecasting, and the adoption really wasn't good from our users. What we designed was too different from what they were doing before. It wasn't like they didn't really understand what they were doing. They didn't understand the results. So we went back to the drawing board. We changed the design of the thing. We added the predictive planning add-in in SmartView for them to be able to do the predictions directly in SmartView, and we're launching this second phase of testing soon. I hope the adoption will be better. The goal of this is really to reduce the time it takes for forecasting and budgeting. It's not to remove all of the manual work that they're doing, like don't have the right level of information in EPM to be able to forecast as they are forecasting on the side. Like they have all the projects information, they have all the workforce information. We don't have that level of detail in the EPM. So it really has to be a combination of both. Like you have the, let's say like the operational forecasting and you have the financial forecasting, and you want to see like, okay, if I were to not change anything to how I'm working currently, my financial forecast is saying I'm going to end up at this point. Is it good enough? Does it fit the LRP? Do I have to change something? Do I have to go get more project? So that's the kind of goal that we're wanting to achieve with the AI in EPM. We also have an in-house data scientist that's working on a machine learning model to make the predictions more accurate. And we're really I'm really excited about the multivariate predictions that are coming to predictive planning. I think this is going to help us a lot. We're also looking into the generative AI capabilities in narrative reporting. I think we could apply this for our management reporting, like some variance analysis and stuff like that using the generative AI. And also in insights in predictive planning. And the thing I'm really looking forward and I'm really impatient to have are the Oracle AI agents.
Okay. All right. Managed services, can you discuss the role of managed services in ensuring a seamless cloud operations post-migration, Randy, and as well as, how critical are these services to your ongoing success?
Yeah, so I was in a session earlier this week, and someone was one of the executive sessions, I think on Monday, and someone had asked the question, were others seeing the difficulty in retaining or attracting EBS talent? And, like as the workforce is aging, a lot of the EBS skills, some are retiring. How do you manage in that kind of situation? And I think this really goes right to the heart of that risk. We've experienced this firsthand. I think we did have an issue that kind of where our primary VBA left the organization on short notice, and that sort of shock drove us into looking at not managed services for everything, but managed services certainly for the areas that were probably not our core skill set or core capability. So for that was managing the infrastructure, DTA services, those sorts of activities. We moved into a managed service, and I think that's helped stabilize and mitigate the risk that we had, which was keeping the right talent around to look after these, critical infrastructure and critical DBA functions. So for us, it was very important. Moving to OCI and further helped in the marketplace. We're able to find more managed service providers that were working in OCI platforms.
Okay. From a cost and ROI perspective, what has been the impact of this migration on your overall IT costs, and how are you measuring your return on these?
So two things there. One would be the migration itself we had done a ROI analysis to look at what was the cost to refresh our infrastructure. So that was going to, fully replace the servers and do this upgrade and stay on-prem. We compared that to the cost of moving to OCI, and ultimately it was about a break even. So if you look at the cost of what we paid to execute this move to OCI, it was about $250,000, which isn't really a lot. This is back in 2020, 2021. And the cost to replace and refresh that infrastructure was going to be, remain on-prem was going to be a little less than that, but not far off that mark. So the payback for us on the move to OCI was almost immediate. It was certainly within a year we paid back that cost. So then the ongoing cost, is really where it's now more of an OpEx. So we're not really looking at CapEx expenditures in future years. Had we been, we'd probably be looking at another hardware refresh now, 2025, 2026. Now we don't really have to worry about that. So the costs for ongoing, maintenance of that and keeping up is, we're in a much better position than we were.
Okay. From a transactional processing perspective, have you
the
improvements on that as well?
Performance has been, one of the things we noticed right away was our processing time is at least 30 to 40% faster. So we were looking at overnight jobs that were running. So that same like for like, this was on, not fully like for like, we were going from 11.9 to 12.29, so there's some changes there. So it's hard maybe to separate some of that out. But on 12.29 and in OCI, we were running 30 to 40% faster time frames on our overnight jobs. The important point though is that was with less CPU. So we took our on-prem environment, which had 24 CPUs, and we moved to 16 CPUs in OCI and achieved 30 to 40% faster performance. So overall, OCI, the tech stack there seems to be, and the infrastructure is, for us at least, definitely seemed to perform better than our on-prem environment was previously.
Okay. From a cultural and organizational change perspective, how is this, how did the migration impact the organization and the workforce?
Yeah, so for EPM, as I said before, it was one of the goals to harmonize the finance function into a single finance function, not small pockets of finance function around the world. So it did impact a lot our organizational culture. So post-migration, I think it did really have a great impact on the collaboration between the teams. They work together a lot better now. There's a lot more of interactions between the regions and the corporate finance teams. There's a lot more interaction between the regions themselves. They help each other when someone doesn't understand how to do something. They don't necessarily come to us. They work together. So I think it's really, really beneficial. Everybody uses the same tool now. They work to the same deadline, so they really understand what the other people are doing. So it helps a lot. And I think our finance function has never been as aligned as it is now. We had a finance strategy meeting not long ago, and everybody was working in the same direction. Everybody agreed on the path to follow to make our finance function better. So I think the EPM Cloud really contributed to that. It's not the only thing, of course, but I think it helped. And on the change management, so to manage the change, what we did is we held multiple information and training sessions with the different teams. We built a community and Viva Engage so they could help each other. They could ask questions. You could see the questions that other people were asking, so it's not siloed. Everybody's working together. We identified champions or super users in each of the regions, so they could go to their champion super users to ask some questions, and they could help with the training. We held drop-in sessions, so people could just come and ask whatever question they had on a specific topic. And we had support available 24 hours for them at the beginning.
No, I was just saying on the EBS side, at least, that upgrade was pretty minimal impact. I think I highlighted at the beginning. Just we were trying to make it more of a technical upgrade than so for the users. A lot of the ways they worked with Oracle didn't change after moving to OCI and after upgrading from 11.9 to 12.2.9. So that was not a significant change management as it could have been. That was our objective really going into it. Not that we didn't want to take advantage of things that were in 12.2.9, we did. But initially we just wanted to bite off the technical move and upgrade, and then start adding and enhancing functionality, start making use of that as we moved along.
Okay. All right. Lessons learned. So looking back, what were some of the key key lessons learned that you would share with organizations that are going to take on a project such as this?
So I think start small, identify your needs from the start, but start small. Don't try to go big bang. Like this is what we did for the ERP, and this is also what we did for the EPM Cloud. So the first step that we did was take our PBCS application and migrate it to OCI as is. We didn't do any changes to that. That was seamless. Like it was change your link connection in SmartView and done. Like everything was the same. No impact on the users. And it allowed us to work with the new interface. And it was really quick to do. After that, we did the ePBCS revamp. So we completely changed our ePBCS application. That was the first phase of EPM Cloud migration. And after that, we did the FCCS implementation. So we didn't do everything at the same time. So I think it's a really good way to do it. Another thing is really think about the structure of your dimensions and plan for changes that will be coming, because there will be changes. You will have to move accounts around. You will have to change your management reporting structure. There will be some reorganizations. There will be some acquisition, divestiture. Like it will change. So plan for it to be able to change. We also started our EPM FCCS implementation at the same time we did the ERP retrofit. So it allowed us to align the chart of accounts between the ERP and the EPM system. So I think that was really beneficial. Looking back to it now and trying to implement EDM, I think it maybe would have been better to start with EDM, so everything would have been aligned all the time. There's no duplicate work in changing metadata here, changing metadata there, changing the metadata here. It's a lot more streamlined if you do EDM first. I think it would have helped. And on the start small, I have one of my team, I asked for, if you had one thing to tell to people, like the lessons learned of that project, what would it be? And he said, get the plane flying, you can get it to cruising altitude later. So really, the implementation of the tool is not the end of everything, it's just the start. So get it going, use it, you're gonna discover so much more by using it than by trying to know what this can do, what can this do, and by having a lot of people using it, users contribute a lot to improving the tool.
Okay, thank you. Randy?
Yeah, on the ERP front, I think my main message, I think I said it earlier, and that's just focusing your resources on and attention to the things that you do well. So for us, that meant, the managing infrastructure was not a core competency. It's a fairly narrow skill set. So for us, moving to OCI, adding a managed service to look after the infrastructure and the DBA functions, that was sort of moving things into a platform or a place where we didn't have to look after that. So allowed us to focus really more on the application side and, where our core competency and knowledge base was. So I think that's the main takeaway for me, just focusing on what we do well.
Okay, from a future outlook perspective, what's next for AtkinsRéalis in terms of cloud adoption and digital transformation? How do you see your strategy evolving over the next coming months, years?
Yeah, I think for us, just moving on to this common EBS platform. So you saw earlier the graph showing the growth that we have as we migrate everyone onto this one EBS platform. So we saw that as a key step towards cloud ERP. So by the end of next year, we'll have virtually the entire company on one ERP using common processes instead of different processes in different ERPs. So when we do move to cloud ERP, it'll be we'll have done a lot of the heavy lifting of kind of aligning processes globally. So that'll make that move a lot easier. So the key focus really in the coming kind of few years really is going to be increase of automation. So we want to further simplify processing. Then EBS, there's lots of processes that have to be run and managed, and so as much as possible, we want to automate that and take the complexity out of the day-to-day business as usual. Incorporate AI as we can. That's as we all know, that's kind of very much evolving. The practical application of AI in our ERP platform is still growing or evolving. So that's as there's use cases there that make sense, we'll look at those. And then I would say the other thing is self-healing of critical processes. So a lot of exceptions that you run into sometimes on various processes, whether it be integrations or distribution processes or generation processes in EBS. A lot of times if you see repeated similar kinds of issues, we can introduce logical ways to fix those automatically so we don't have incidents that users are raising. We actually solve those problems proactively. So that's another thing we want to improve, ultimately just to make the effort to manage our environment less.
Okay.
For EPM, really the future looks bright. I'm really excited of what we can do with EPM Cloud. We have an enterprise license, so we can basically turn on any applications that we want in that tool at no cost at all. So it's great. Currently, we're using FCCS, planning, and narrative reporting. So since the go live, we turned on the supplemental data module in FCCS for quarterly reporting, so people can put some qualitative information on their financial data for the consolidation team. Before, they had to retype all of their quantitative information and add the qualitative data to separate forms. Now they do it all in the system. It's all streamlined. There's approval. There's workflow. So that helps with the quarter end process. We also started using narrative reporting post go live. So our FP&A team does a bunch of validations on the data that they were doing manually, doing ad hoc, refreshing their files every month, every day, every couple of hours to see if everything was aligned. We moved all of those or many of those to narrative reporting. And the good thing with narrative reporting is that you can connect to all of your cubes. So you can connect to the FCCS cube, you can connect to the planning cube in the same application. So we have validations between FCCS and the planning application there. So it's really, that's new. It's something that we are still working on. We want to produce our financial statement notes also from there to remove the need of taking all of the numbers and making sure that it's the number that's in the system. Well, of course, because it's out of the system. We are also just starting a project for EPM for sustainability. our greenhouse gas emissions are calculated manually in a bunch of Excel files. So we want to move that to EPM for sustainability. What are we doing? As I said, we're trying to implement EBM now. So the team member that just talked about the plane and get it flying is working on implementing EBM to manage our EPM metadata currently, and we'll look also if we can do something with some part of the ERP metadata, because our cost centers in the ERP basically match our management members in EPM. So if we could manage this into the EDM application, it will help a lot with getting everything updated quicker. We want to automate reporting as much as possible. There is still some manual reports that people are doing, like they are adding some comments, they do add-ops, they do HSGETs, they add some comments to it. Well, we can use narrative reporting to do that. We can add comments in narrative reporting. So this is one thing that we're looking to do. And of course, AI. We want to further explore the AI capacities and all the applications, the AI, generative AI in narrative reporting, the generative AI in insights. And we also have the tax reporting application that we can turn on. I think this would be beneficial for our company because we are in many different countries. We operate in, I don't know, something like 53 different countries. And with the Pillar 2 requirement, I think it would benefit a lot our tax team to have the tax reporting application turned on. That's a little bit more development. So like we are in a process of finance transformation. We're doing the one ERP transformation, bringing everybody on a single ERP. So we have to plan the resources appropriately, but there's a lot of room to grow. I think it's a great tool for that, really.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. We'll move into Q&A. If anybody has any questions, I'll pass the mic around. Anybody have any questions they'd like to ask the panel? All right, let me see if I can take this out of here without breaking it. There you go. Yep.
Hi. This question, have you moved any other workloads into OCI besides your ERP? Question number one. And then I was curious if you did your BYOL or your own license working with the cloud community. Just curious if that led to any cost savings.
Yeah, so we have moved, the only other workload besides ERP was our AP automation solution, which is Kofax at the moment. So all the Kofax infrastructure is also in OCI. We have looked at a few other, I'd say, minor elements, which are around more of the network security things that we're putting inside of OCI. But yeah, so no, not a lot. Now, we did put a lot of work in making sure that our OCI location was near a data center that was, so for the applications that are not in OCI, the latency between our data center and OCI was this small, so things functioned well there. So that was probably the main consideration. And then, I'm sorry, your other question was around the.
Were you able to achieve any? So when we moved, we were able to use the cloud commit and we were able to cancel.
Oh, yeah.
Documents were led to significant cost savings. So just curious which model you're operating on.
Yeah, we're under BYOL at the moment, so we interestingly didn't start at that way. We initially were doing a subscription on the database side of things. There are some features, I think, on the database side that Oracle tells you that if you do BYOL, you don't get some of there's some aspects that don't come to mind right off the top of my head, but we did switch and now remain on BYOL, so it's for us a pretty significant investment in our perpetual licenses that we wanted to obviously take advantage of. So it's reduced our cost, our ongoing cloud spend.
Sudhakar, go ahead.
Yeah. So you mentioned small ERP applications talking to ERP. So are there any JD Advance or NetSuite or what they are owned by Apple or SAP or?
Yeah, so we have ACPAC. A lot of like our joint ventures, really small parts of the business remain in ACPAC. We have Deltic Crosspoint for one of our nuclear business. We have a big JD Edwards application for that was UK, Middle East, Asia Pac that we moved and India, and we moved UK and India to the One ERP program already, but the rest is going to be moved. But we also have another JD application that is for our O&M business. What else do we have? Anything to think of,
That
Randy?
mostly covers it. I think there's, as you know, any large global organization, we've got small pockets where we've got isolated local, applications, but those are not immediately on our roadmap. I think through 2026 we'll have 85% of the company on One ERP, and then it'll be a business case whether we move every last piece onto one platform.
Like we still have really small parts of the business that do their financials on Excel.
We got a follow-up? Okay.
So how are you integrating talking to those applications? Like doing file-based transfer or OCI, OIC, or any SOAP calls? How are you talking to the small application? One year.
Well, on the ERP side, there's not really any, so that's but on the EPM side, Laurence can.
Yeah, so on the EPM side, we really have, from the data integration, we pull directly the data from the Canadian Oracle EBS. We pull directly the data from the One ERP instance of EBS, and we pull directly the data from the JDE application in the UK. I can't say the UK anymore because they're not in the UK anymore. What will I say? And the other ones, they're not directly connected to EPM. They extract their trial balance and they load the trial balance manually with a CSV file in EPM. And we have some that do the mapping of their chart of accounts offline. And the biggest one, we have the mapping of the chart of accounts directly into EPM. So it's really a manual effort. It's not something that takes time. Really, just extract the TB, upload the CSV file, and it's done. But there's no direct connection.
Yeah, I will say that a lot of our decision making on the One ERP, that graph we saw earlier, scaling up, a lot of the decisions of what we're prioritizing are around internal trading. So we do a lot of, there's shared resources that we have in India and Romania and other locations where we want to make it easy for those locations to do work on projects anywhere in the world. And so the priority really is getting those entities where we have core, significant activity that we want to have all under one platform.
Yeah. Like our O&M business in Canada mostly works together. They don't have a lot of interactions with the rest of the business. So this one is out of scope for the One ERP project. It will remain on JD Edwards for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, that one's a rather complex one. That particular operation.
And O&M projects are really, really different.
Like
they are in 35 years project. It's completely different. So having them on a global chart of accounts would be a bit challenging.
Right. Are there any other questions? Okay. Well, I'd like to thank Randy and Laurence for taking time away from their busy project schedule to come help us with this presentation. And I'd like to thank everybody that came to attend, being that this is the last day. So safe travels, everybody, and hope to see you at next year's conference or at Cloud World coming up in October. Thank you.
Thank you.